Back at MD Shohagdio in studio. MD Shohagdio in studio, and it's gonna be epic. Today, we're diving into a super fascinating topic from world geography. The most famous international boundaries, also known as lines of demarcation. Now, these aren't just lines on a map. They separate countries, but more importantly, they carry immense historical and political weight. So make sure you stick with me until the very end, because understanding these lines is absolutely crucial for competitive exams like UPSC, BCS, SC, WBCS, and many others. Ready? Let's get started. First up, let's journey to Asia, a continent home to some of the most hotly debated international borders in the world. We'll begin with the Radcliffe Line. This line separates India and Pakistan and was drawn back in 1947 by Sir Cyril Radcliffe during the intense period of the partition of British India. It was a moment that changed the subcontinent forever. Next, we have the McMahon Line, which marks the boundary between India and China, specifically in the Tibetan region. This line was established way back in 1914 under the Simla Agreement. However, to this day, China doesn't officially recognize it, which is a major reason for the ongoing border tensions you often hear about in the news. Moving westward, we find the Durand Line, which runs between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Established in 1893, this line controversially cuts through the Pashtun tribal areas, dividing communities and families. As you can imagine, it remains a point of dispute and has been a source of instability for over a century. Now, let's head to the Korean Peninsula to talk about the 38th parallel. After the turmoil of World War II, this line became the de facto border dividing North Korea and South Korea. It starkly separates two vastly different worlds, a communist state in the north and a democratic one in the south. A similar line from history is the 17th parallel. This line once divided North and South Vietnam. It was a focal point during the Vietnam War but ceased to be a boundary after the country was unified. It's a powerful reminder of how conflict can draw lines and how peace can erase them. And of course, we can't talk about Asian borders without mentioning the line of control, or LOC, and the line of actual control, or LAC. The LOC is the heavily militarized, de facto boundary between the Indian and Pakistani-controlled parts of Kashmir. The LAC, on the other hand, is the demarcation line between India and China, marking the territory currently under each nation's military control. Both are incredibly sensitive and significant geopolitical flashpoints. Alright, let's shift our focus and travel to Europe, a continent whose map has been redrawn multiple times by world wars. First, we have the legendary Maginot Line. This was an incredibly elaborate line of fortifications built by France before World War II, designed to be an impenetrable defense against a German invasion. As a direct counter, Germany constructed its own defensive wall, the Siegfried Line, right opposite the Maginot Line. It was a classic example of the military posturing and escalating tensions that defined the pre-war era. Both lines are now historical relics, but they tell a powerful story of fear and preparation. Next is the Oder Neisse Line. This boundary was established after World War II and forms the modern border between Germany and Poland. It represented a major territorial shift for both nations and was a key part of the post-war settlement in Europe. Let's also touch upon the Curzon Line. This was a boundary proposed after World War I to serve as a border between Poland and Soviet Russia. Although it wasn't fully implemented as intended at the time, its path heavily influenced the final Polish border after World War II. And finally, in Northern Europe, we have the Mannerheim Line. This was a formidable defensive line built by Finland to protect itself from the Soviet Union during the Winter War. It's a testament to Finnish resilience and their determined fight against a much larger aggressor. Now, let's pack our virtual bags and head to the Middle East and Africa, regions where modern borders were often drawn by outside powers. Here, we encounter the Blue Line. This is not a physical border, but a line of withdrawal demarcated by the United Nations in the year 2000 to confirm the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Lebanon. Then there's the Green Line, also known as the 1949 Armistice Line. This line marks the boundary between Israel and the Palestinian territories, specifically the West Bank, before the Six-Day War in 1967. It remains a central reference point in discussions about a two-state solution. Perhaps one of the most consequential lines in this region is the Sykes-Picot line. This wasn't a physical demarcation but a secret agreement made in 1916 between Britain and France. It carved up the Arab lands of the former Ottoman Empire into British and French spheres of influence. And its legacy of artificial borders continues to fuel conflict and instability in the Middle East to this day. Okay, let's cross the Atlantic and explore the Americas. Our first stop is the Mason-Dixon Line. Originally surveyed in the 1760s to resolve a border dispute, this line later took on huge symbolic importance in the United States. It came to represent the cultural and political divide between the northern free states and the southern slave-owning states, a division that ultimately led to the Civil War. Heading north, we find a much more peaceful border, the 49th parallel. This line of latitude forms the majority of the boundary between the United States and Canada. Established by a treaty in 1846, it's often cited as the longest undefended border in the world, a symbol of friendship and cooperation between two nations. And let's go way back in history to the line of Tordesillas. Drawn in 1494 and brokered by the Pope, this imaginary line divided the New World of the Americas between Spain and Portugal. It's a fascinating glimpse into the age of discovery and the colonial ambitions of European powers. Finally, let's wrap up with a few crucial global lines that everyone should know. First is the equator, the imaginary line at 0 degrees latitude that circles the Earth, dividing it into the northern and southern hemispheres. It's fundamental to our understanding of climate and geography. Then we have the prime meridian, the line of 0 degrees longitude that passes through Greenwich in London. This is the starting point for measuring longitude and for coordinating time zones around the world with Greenwich Mean Time, or GMT. And last but not least, the international date line. Located roughly at 180 degrees longitude, this line separates 2 consecutive calendar days. When you cross it heading east, you go back a day, and when you cross it heading west, you jump a day forward. It's a mind-bending but essential concept for global travel and communication. So, there you have it, some of the most famous international boundaries that have profoundly shaped our world's geography and history. I really hope you found this video helpful and learned something new. If you did, please show some love by hitting that like button, sharing it with your friends, and before you go, let me know in the comments, which boundary surprised you the most, or which one do you think has had the biggest impact on history? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.